Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Over the course of what we've done over the years, we've been so honored by the work of Harvard University. Martin Feldstein, the original support of Kenneth Rogoff, Benjamin Friedman, and others, and it devolves down to their freshman class, which is legendary worldwide EC10, Economic 10. Recently, Greg Mankiw, the force there, and he gave the baton off to Jason Furman in the recent years. Mr. Furman has public policy perspective, typically from a Democratic view, but I'd call him on the edge of bipartisan, and he joins us now from Harvard. I'm going to redo your essay, Jason. It's a clinic in the New York Times here over the weekend. I'm going to get right down to the single argument here. Mr. Trump has returned to again and again is that other countries are taking advantage of the United States. Is the Trump grievance deserved?
Absolutely not. I mean, that essay I had in the New York Times was just what I teach in my class to my introductory students.
It felt like it. I felt like that, yeah.
And it's the same lesson I got from Marty Feldstein when I took the class decades ago. Trade deficits are not inherently bad. Imports are a wonderful thing. Trade deficits don't happen because of differential tariffs in different countries. And changing tariffs doesn't solve trade deficits. Every step of the reasoning underlying today's announcement is just completely at odds with the most basic economics.
Within this, Professor Furman, as Professor Hassett is trying to help out the Trump administration, Kevin Hassett with a PhD from a Philadelphia school named Pennsylvania. And there's others, Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. From where you sit, Jason Furman, how alone is President Trump?
You know, I don't know exactly what's going on inside the White House, but I know you have Bessent a year ago basically saying tariffs are a bad thing, a loaded gun pointed at the head of the U.S. economy. I know Kevin has historically been a free trader. I hope they're trying to pull things in a less bad direction. But, you know, when your opening gambit is 20% across the board tariffs, you can move in a less bad direction and still have things be pretty bad.
Jason, as I understand it, as I understand the administration's perspective, they simply cite the fact that the U.S. pays a weighted average tariff of 2 to 3 times the rate that we charge most of the rest of the world, and they want that to be leveled up. Is that kind of their argument? And if so, that seems fair, a level playing field. Is that a sound economic argument?
First of all, those other countries are often hurting themselves with their tariffs. You look at these Latin American countries that have had high tariffs. That wasn't a smart strategy to take advantage of the United States. That was a dumb strategy to stunt their economic growth. But let's do some of the numbers. Let's say you do want reciprocation. We have tariffs against most rich countries of around 1 or 2%. Most rich countries have tariffs against us of about 1 or 2%. So we don't need any new tariffs against rich countries. We don't need any new tariffs against Canada and Mexico. Then when it comes to China and India, if we want to even them up, we would need to raise ours by 2 or 3 percentage points, not anything like the 10, 20 that we're hearing about in today's announcement.
All right, so that's the math. What are some of the potential unintended consequences here? People will cite 2 that I can think of. One is slower growth. Number 2 is higher inflation. Are those valid?
Absolutely. I think every Wall Street forecaster has downgraded their forecast for growth and upgraded their forecast for inflation. The Fed did the same thing, although the Fed wasn't 100% explicit about what drove their changes. It's hard to imagine there was anything else that was going on there. But to that list of 2, I'd add a longer term one, which is geopolitics. The United States is a big, important country. It is not infinitely big. It is not infinitely important. China is also a really, really big player in the world. The only way we can confront China is by doing it together with allies. And if we alienate our allies, there's a lot more countries that trade more with China than with the United States. We're just going to push that further and help realign global geopolitics away from the U.S. alliance and towards a Chinese entente.
On your morning commute this morning across Canada, across Mexico, in America, Jason Furman with us of Harvard University. We say good morning on Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, the new digital experience. And of course, to all of you on YouTube, subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts, and I'll get out the Furman New York Times essay here in a bit. Jason, I want to go to the driver of this, and I want to start with Lighthizer, who grew up in the crucible of northeastern Ohio, where as a kid, he saw American steel, industrial might disappear. And then we've got Navarro of LA, of Irvine, with his own take here to move us away from free trade. The heart of this is the math you teach, which is the J curve in economics. There's going to be short-term pain, but out there, I sound like a Linda Ronstadt song. Out there somewhere, Jason Furman, there's going to be a better American trade policy. What do they get wrong about the midterm and long-term benefit of what is clearly perceived to be short-term pain?
Right. I mean, the thing that a lot of people don't understand is when you put a tariff on imports, you're effectively putting a tariff on exports too. That could happen because other countries retaliate with their own tariffs. It could happen because your tariffs lead to an exchange rate appreciation, which make it harder for you to export. What do we export in the United States? Well, a lot of that is really terrific manufacturing that's made here in America, sold around the world, and we're going to have less of all of that. I don't see this as a pro-manufacturing plan.
Hey,
we're going to raise the cost of inputs to
Jason, Henrietta Trace was waiting to come on here in the politics of the moment. She just sent me an email and said, Furman, give me a dollar call. Does Jason Furman have a strong dollar, weak dollar outcome out of this? Let's go Robert Mundell right now. Jason Furman, with or the dollar?
I'm with a strong dollar, but we're going to see what the announcement is today and how it compares to expectations. Also depends a lot on the Fed. I think the Fed is going to be and should be reluctant to cut rates when inflation, if it goes above 3%, sure, they can say their models say it's transitory, but they're going to be pretty nervous, and they should be, to act on that belief, especially with inflation expectations so elevated.
More op-eds. There are people I know, Jason, sending your op-ed to their children saying, just shut up and read it. Jason Furman, thank you so much with Harvard.